Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's actually my morning, so it's great to be here today to talk with you all. Um, Before I do, I want to congratulate GPM EMEA for this conference. They've put together an amazing program for you. My name is Joel Carboni, and as Ava mentioned, I'm the founder and president of this organization. Started back in 2009 when I had a lot more hair and it was much of it much less gray. To see where we've come since that time and the impact we've had and continue to have on the profession is really what keeps us going. I've worked in project program portfolio management since 1997, and I'm also the president emeritus of the IPMA in the US. I have two children and live in the Detroit metro area here in Michigan in the United States. So this is a little bit about me. What I'm going to do is talk just a little bit about who we are, kind of cover a few things here with Ava, and then I'm going to talk about sustainability for my time. So let's jump into it. So again, just kind of rehash a little bit what Ava said and share a little bit more. We are a social enterprise, which means that we are a business for good. Um, when we first started up, we thought, let's become a nonprofit, but in reality, some nonprofits in the US are able to actually hide money. And so what we wanted to do was to be able to practice what we preach. We help organizations become more sustainable. And with the social enterprise model, we have to actually put most of our proceeds back into programs. And that's what we felt that was best for a project organization here in the US to really walk the talk. And so that's what we do. As you mentioned, we offer training. We have methodologies such as PRISM, and also we have tools like the P5 standard, which is available, I think, now in 7 languages and coming soon in French and Portuguese, so it's great. We have a world-renowned certification program. We've had over 17,000 people certified with GPM, and we have, as I mentioned, taught or trained over, I think, 100,000 people, and our standard P5 has been downloaded over 500,000 times. And most importantly, we play well with others. We collaborate with a lot of other PM associations and sustainability organizations around the world, trying to add value and collaborate whenever possible. Just recently, it's not been formally announced yet, but we just signed an MOU with the Agile Business Consortium, and we'll be developing a solution together for Agile, so that's really exciting. We, as one of the original 14 UN Prime supporting organizations, our partner universities are using our program to provide students with the tools they need in the field that are in line with what's important to them, and that is a better world. The program is customized to each university's needs and allows them to join and submit progress reports to UN Prime, which is important. So you can see here's a few of our partner universities. We have some in Russia, we have some in Spain, we have some in France, we have some in the US, we have some in Asia and China. So we do work all over the world. And I can't list all of our training partners on one slide, there's a lot. So I'll mention just sort of our regional offices. We have our headquarters here in the US, obviously GPM EMEA based in Poland, focusing on Europe, Middle East, and Africa. LATAM, or Latin America, is based in Argentina with Monica Gonzalez, and our CIS region, headed up by Oksana Klemenko in Russia, and Asia Pacific, headed by Jeff Dutton in Australia. So we do cover the entire world, hopefully get to Antarctica at some point soon. A few of our success stories is that, or makes us who we are, we were a key contributor to the development of the UN SDGs, 17 goals to make the world a better place. Most specifically, we work on number 12. Our P5 standard is mostly used by the Fortune 1000. As I mentioned before, 500,000 downloads worldwide in 7 different languages. Academic programs in actually now over 21 countries. I think it's now actually 23. And we certified people in 144 countries. So we are a global organization. But who uses us? Well, we have a myriad of organizations who have adopted our standards and used them in their projects all over the world. You might recognize a few of these. Google, for example, U.S. Air Force, New Balance, Adobe. So we do impact a wide range of organizations. We don't focus on construction or IT or any one sector. Wherever there's projects, we exist. So that's important to note. A few of our sustainability affiliations, we work with the UN Global Compact, and we have attended their summit since, I believe, 2013. And why am I seeing my screen? There we go. Since 2013. We work with Business for Peace. We were a co-founder of that initiative. We work with the COP system. You can all see my screen, right?
We cannot see your screen.
That is a problem. See, I'm talking and you all.
Before we could see.
I'm talking and you all have no idea what I'm talking about. Let's try that again. It showed me as sharing. Can you see now?
Yes.
It's okay now, yeah.
Yes. Now it's
okay. Well, there we go. So, in any case, I think I've been able to vocalize what we do, but I'll continue. So, and anyway, so we work with the UN Global Compact. We were one of the first supporters of the UN Prime Initiative. We've worked with the Earth Summit since before we were GPM, back in the first summit, 2001. We work with the GRI. Really, anyone who is a global influencer or actor on the world for sustainability, we are involved with, and we help really represent the project side in that effort. So that's really who we are, and we are looking forward to bigger and better things as we continue to grow. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what's really important today, and really our key topic is the sustainability imperative. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we focus on this key issue. But the first thing I want to say is, what is sustainability? It's a household word that we all hear. We need to be sustainable. We need to act sustainably. But what does that really mean? I'll share a little story. After we were about 5 years old as an organization, and we just published our first standard, and our method was growing out there, I started to attend conferences to sort of share who we are. And I was watching a presentation by, I guess, a Fortune 50 company who had just won a major award from the Dow Jones. And they have an annual Dow Jones Green Award that they give out. And this company had won it for a project they did doing wind farms. And as we understand sustainability, it's not just environmental, it's not just social, it's also economic, and it impacts a lot of various areas and aspects within those realms. And this organization was showcasing the project they did to win this award. And as I watched the project, it was about developing a wind farm in South America. And this company was based in Europe. And as I'm watching the videos and the testimonials from the project team, I noticed that everyone in the video was white. And there was no representation of anyone from South America on this project team. So I asked some questions after they were finished. I said, congratulations, great initiative. The outcome creates renewable energy, which is great. But from a project perspective, if this is a project award, how is there sustainability involved? And they looked at me like I was from another planet. And I said, because I watched your video and all I saw was, well, white people. I said, did you source any resources from the local country to help in the project, or even after handoff, are they in place to help maintain and support it? And they said, well, no, we built a little office there to support it from our company based in Europe. And I said, okay, so you flew everyone across the ocean constantly to do this project. And then you put a small group of people from your company, you didn't hire locally, basically. No. Okay, so they could have upskilled people. They could have sourced products locally. They could have worked with local suppliers. None of that was done. So in the end, it was not a sustainable project, just a renewable energy outcome. And that's not sustainable. That has been our problem all along. We tend to focus on initiatives that give us a result, but we tend to ignore how we do what we do. And in the project world, that's really important. So sustainability has to impact all three dimensions, and it has to penetrate how we work. Our ways of working have to change. And I'll get into more of that here in a minute. Now, sustainable development, you can go back to really 1983 with the development of the Brundtland Report and that whole commission that was asked to develop ways of working and to define sustainable development. And so this has become sort of the de facto definition of sustainable development. It is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs. Well, how can we have sustainability when the world's ecosystems are in the condition that they are? They're broken. We have broken the environment, and so we have already compromised future generations. So there is no possibility that we can have development that meets the needs of the future because we've already compromised the future's ability to meet their own needs. So that means now we have to act, we need to change, we need to do better. And we can't just focus on the ways we've been managing projects since the 1930s. That's not going to get us where we need to go. And here's what I mean by that. If you look at this little graphic here, what you'll see is carbon sources. Now, in the pre-industrial revolution, the sources of carbon in the ground were exponential. We were not extracting them to create products and services. We didn't all have 10 screens in our houses. We didn't have multiple cars in our driveways. We didn't have big fancy houses. We weren't polluting the earth nearly the extent we are now. And so the sources of carbon were large. The inputs to our human systems were also pretty small. And therefore, the outputs into the environment were also pretty small, and we have a large ability to sink them back into the ground. Well, now, if you fast forward, 80 or so years, our human systems are so bloated. Every house has more than one TV. We all have phones. We have iPads. We have screens. We have all these things, running all these programs, and we have all this communication, and we have so much transportation that we are just crushing the environment. And we're pulling carbon out of the ground. We're putting it into the atmosphere, and we don't have anywhere to put it. So it's getting trapped. And so since the Industrial Revolution, we have completely crushed our environment, and that has to stop. More specifically, we consume more than 1.7 planets worth of resources every year. 1.7 planets. We don't have 1.7 planets. We only have one. And what makes matters worse, each country has their own date by which this occurs. Where I live here in the US, we did this by March 15th of this year. So we've already surpassed that number. And you can go to, there's a website, it's, I don't have it here, it's earthovershoot.com. You can take a look at where your country stands. It's quite shocking. And this is why we live in a degenerating world. We have to be able to flip the script and become a regenerative world. And that's really what sustainability has to transcend and become, is more into regenerative development. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So this is a very interesting looking graph. What you have here at the top is a regenerating system, what we need to become. At the bottom, you have a degenerating system. That's kind of what we really are. So on the left axis, we are depleting resources. Like I mentioned before, we're pulling carbon out of the ground. All these fossil fuels, we're just pulling them out of the ground and using them for our human consumption. Where we need to be harnessing resources and regenerating. And that's really, the goal. So sustainability is right here. It means literally to just sustain. Well, that's a problem, because what is it that we want to sustain? Is it the way things are today in 2021? I don't think so. Well, if we could go back 50 years and sustain that, that's a possibility. So really, the idea of sustainable development isn't even possible anymore. We have to get into regenerative development and then create a momentum that can be sustained. So when we talk about sustainability, what we mean is to be able to regenerate and then sustain. So I want you all to really remember that, okay? It's very important. If you look at, for example, conventional or business as usual, as we call it, that's contributing to our degenerating system. Even the green movement, and if we can go back 10 years and call ourselves a different name, but we are GPM, we're Green Project Management. But in reality, the green movement itself, it made incremental changes, but not enough to take us out of the whole depleting system. And sustainable, as you see here, is really just treading water. Do no harm. And maybe do some good, but not enough to really make a big dent or a big change. Our objective is to get to restorative and regenerative, where we're actually supporting nature and ensuring that the environment can thrive under our stewardship, thereby then supporting us. Because I'll tell you, we've always, a lot of us grew up with the Save the Planet movement. The planet's going to be just fine. The question is, are we? We saw last year with COVID that after 7 months of inactivity, we weren't leaving the house, we weren't driving, we weren't going out to restaurants. Nature bounced back really fast. But can we sustain that? Because none of us are going to stay in our houses for the next 10 years. We have to be able to coexist with nature and really support and enhance our natural systems. I want to show you a concept here, and this will really kind of drive it home. Now, this is a fascinating concept called the three horizons. And a big kudos to Daniel Christian Vall, Kate Rayworth, who is the architect of the donut economy, and Bill Sharp really put this thing together. It's a simple framework for thinking about the future and achieving the future we want. Think of it as 3 patterns of activity and how their interactions play over time. So the left axis is really prevalence, and the right axis is time. Okay, so it encapsulates everything from the built environment, ways of working, politics, everything. It's business as usual. So you can see here, Horizon 1 is business as usual, right? We all know that it's not what we want, and we all know that it is not sustainable. Horizon 3, and I know I skipped 2, but bear with me here. Horizon 3 is what we want. It is a regenerative future where sustainability isn't the end goal, but a constant push for what is better. Okay? Now, H2, or horizon number 2, is disruptive innovation. It's our ability to innovate and transcend our current ways of working to bridge us from horizon 1 to horizon 3. This is why GPM exists. We are pushing the boundaries, and for 12 years now, we've challenged this is how we've always done it, that mentality, and our opportunity exists for change right here. For our role, for the part of the project profession, we must break away from the concepts that have held us down for the past 80 years. Our profession is really rooted in practices stemming from manufacturing and operations. We have to innovate. We have to disrupt. Let me be more clear. It's getting hot in here, everybody. Earth's climate is determined by a very delicate balance between how much of the sun's radioactive energy and radiative energy, not radioactive. Listen to me. I've not had enough coffee yet today. It's a balance between how much of the sun's radiative energy is absorbed into the atmosphere and at the surface, and how much thermal infrared radiation the Earth emits into space, the balance. Now, the study that NASA and NOAA just put out just last week finds that the doubling of the imbalance is partially the result of an increase in greenhouse gases due to human activity, also known as a anthropogenic forcing. We must change this. I cannot be more clear. This is our mandate. We must change this. Specifically, 2 degrees. We are doubling the number of people affected by water scarcity. We are doubling the losses of corn yields in the tropics. We are increasing by 10 times the frequency of ice-free summers in the Arctic Ocean. We are losing 30% more coral reefs meaning that a total of 99% of coral reefs will be gone forever. We're losing an additional 50% of global fisheries. We still can change this, but we have to act. Look, the scientific consensus is clear. The discussion is no longer, will this happen? It has happened. The question isn't how bad will it be? It's bad now. We know more catastrophic changes are just around the corner. We have to act now. If COVID wasn't a wake-up call to all of us, we're lost. Now, there's a lot of discussion, at least here in my country, about where did it come from? Did it come from a lab? Did it come from, a wet market? The fact is that we are encroaching on ecosystems that we should not be, and that's where it came from. We are overreaching and we are squashing ecosystems that we have no place being in. And that's going to continue to cause problems. And as we push the climate system to further extremes, the costs of climate change will become much more intense and widespread. Droughts will cut off vital water supplies from hundreds of millions of farmers, as well as those that feed the global supply chains. Deadly heat and sea level rises will render whole regions uninhabitable. Every day that it rains in Miami, Florida, the entire city floods. That didn't happen just 10 years ago. This is going to lead to climate refugees, poverty, and yes, even more pandemics. It is on us to create change, specifically in the ways that we do things, the ways we work. I mentioned there's too much carbon in the air, but the key and the important thing, the scientific thing to understand, it's the specific isotopes in the air that are created only by burning of fossil fuels. CO2 is produced from burning fossil fuels or burning forests, has a quite different isotopic composition from the CO2 in the atmosphere. The CO2 is already in the atmosphere. This is because plants have a preference for lighter isotopes, specifically 12C versus 13C. I know it's really technical, but bear with me here. So they have a lower 13C/12C ratios. Since fossil fuels are ultimately derived from ancient plants, plants and fossil fuels all have roughly the same 13C/12C ratio, okay? About 2% lower than that of atmospheric CO2 that exists without them. So as CO2 from these materials are released into and mixes with the atmosphere, the average 13C/12C ratio in the atmosphere decreases. This is why we can definitively say that crossing 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere is the problem for climate change. We can measure it, we know what it is, and we have to stop it. When we crossed this threshold in 2016, it was a wake-up call, like, whoa, this is a problem. No going back, and now we're hovering at, today I checked this morning, we're at 419. So we continue to climb that ladder, and we cannot cross that 2-degree increase globally in a constant state. There's no going back. I don't mean to be the harbinger of doom here, guys, but this tells us that if we've already reached this, we can immediately impact processes to change and impact our profession at a profound level to create a better world. So that way human life and all life can be sustained. That's important. Biodiversity is traditionally defined as the variety of life on Earth in all its forms. It comprises the number of species, their genetic variation, and the interaction of these life forms with complex ecosystems. In a UN report published in 2019, scientists warned that 1 million species out of an estimated total of 8 million are threatened with extinction. Think about that. Researchers even consider that we are in the middle of the 6th mass extinction in Earth's history. Caused by humanity. This is not okay. So why is biodiversity important? I think it's pretty clear. Healthy ecosystems provide us with the essentials that we take for granted. Plants give our energy from the sun, making it available to other life forms. Bacteria and other living organisms break down organic matter into nutrients, providing plants and healthy soil to grow in. Pollinators, such as bees, are essential in plant reproduction, guaranteeing that we have a food supply. And plants and oceans act as major carbon sinks. As they become more polluted, they have less ability to do that for us. In short, biodiversity provides us with clean air, fresh water, good quality soil and crop pollination. It helps us fight climate change and adapt to it, as well as reduce the impact of natural hazards. Since living organisms interact in dynamic ecosystems, the disappearance of one species alone can have a far-reaching impact on the food chain. It's impossible to know exactly what the consequences of mass extinction would be for humans, but we do know that for now, the diversity of nature allows us to thrive. So without it, we're not going to. Just a couple quick notes here. So according to the U.S. intelligence community, which is once again, U.S. intelligence community, no longer a scary entity led by an idiot. The U.S. intelligence community's assessment of global water security by 2030, humanity's annual global water requirements will exceed current sustainable water supplies by 40%. 40%, people. About 4.5 billion people globally already live within 50 kilometers of an impaired water resource. That's a massive number. It's just massive. It takes about 12 gallons per day to sustain a human, and the average American uses 158 gallons. We have to rethink things. We have to readjust. We have to do the right things the right way. Inequality, another important aspect of sustainability. It's not just about the environment or the economy, it's about other issues as well. Just 8 men around the world own the same wealth as 3.6 billion people who make up the poorest half of humanity. We have a broken economic system. Women are paid 20% less than their male counterparts performing the same job. It's pathetic. We can do better. So what has been done? Well, we have the UN SDGs, and as I mentioned earlier, GPM is proud that we were a key contributor to this. I won't go into too many details about working groups, but we exited number 13 due to its sponsor being a polluter, and wanted to focus on number 12 because responsible consumption has a lot to do with projects and how we manage our resources. We felt that the best use of our time is to contribute to an SDG that we really do work with. Now these are fantastic in some ways. They're okay in others. It got the world to focus on some very key important issues, right? The SDGs are, they're ambitious. But again, no country is close to achieving them. They're universal. They apply equally to both developing and developed countries. They're comprehensive. There's 17 goals supported by 169 targets and 230 indicators to let us know if we're reaching those targets. They're all interconnected. So if you take on number 12, you're indirectly affecting number 11, 4, 3, 7. They're all interconnected. None of them can be delivered individually. You have to tackle them all. Now, you could focus on one or two and directly impact the others, but you can't just think, I'm going to do just number 12, right? We have to see what we can do for all of them. But they also exclude individual empowerment and the economy at the service of people, planet, and root cause. So They don't really give us the guidance for one organization or for one individual to say, I want to do this. These are really made for each country to support and figure out ways and develop KPIs for each organization to be able to contribute. At their core, they weren't developed for business to be able just to start running right away with them. They're also top down. How well does that work? We know that grassroots movements have to take foothold to really drive these initiatives and address the root cause of why these things had to be created in the first place. Let me give you some examples, and I'll just talk about one. SDG number 1 has 3 targets for no poverty for this goal. That is, eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere. That's great. Reduce by at least half the proportion of men, women, and children living in poverty. Also great. Reduce the vulnerability of the poor to economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. Fantastic. How? It does not address what social constructs led to extreme poverty, nor how to address them. It just says, we need to do this. Well, no one would disagree, but tell us how, okay? Now, I'm not going to get into GPM solution architecture, and that's for Dave to do, but he's going to give you the tools that we've developed that tie directly into the SDGs. So if you use these tools, and more importantly, in your projects, in your trainings, in your universities, how you can teach others how to use these tools and on a global scale, make positive change in a big, big way. Now, it was surveyed to by Accenture, major consulting firm Accenture, and the UN Global Compact. They found that 1,000 CEOs in 25 countries, 25 industries, and 100 countries found that these to be the top issues from their executive minds, starting with waste and ending in right-wing politics. Now, I hope that some of that concern has been reduced now that the American nightmare that was Donald Trump is now hopefully over. Time will tell. But again, from left to right, waste production, pollution, failure to recycle, intensive farming and deforestation, overconsumption of energy, fossil fuels, and also meat, GHG emissions and toxic products, inflation, stagnant wages, correlation of those two, overpopulation, gender inequality, immigration and unstable immigration, biodiversity loss, which I talked about today, unsustainable transportation, there's too many cars on the road, and no, electric cars are not the answer, because that just introduces new problems that we can't really address yet. Infrastructure, the batteries that consume too much lithium, it's just a problem. An aging society, changing workforces, and of course, right-wing politics. So these are a few issues that the CEO sees being the problem. Now, if they can see this, why are we not acting? Why are our projects not addressing these specific issues right away? There's a big disconnect. So how do we reconcile? Let me give you an example. So since time without beginning, and this will be my last slide here, then I want to give you a big thanks. Since time without beginning, the iron triangle or triple constraint has been the basal measurement for project quality. Projects should meet the schedules, requirements, allotted budgets, and scope of work, and that defines quality. Now this is important, and I am not saying they shouldn't, but given the state of the planet since the Industrial Revolution and what I've just covered, and our goal to reach that third horizon, we have to dig deeper. We have an obligation to do better. The time constraint can be traced back to Henry Ford or Fordism, which I was just visiting the first Ford plant yesterday in the assembly line and how that all worked. Cost or economic efficiency can be traced back to Frederick Taylor or Taylorism, and scope management can be tied back to Deming's model. So all that's rooted in manufacturing. All these manufacturing type processes and ideas are more regulatory in nature. Well, projects, as we know, are temporary endeavors. So what do we do? What's the answer? How do we reconcile? Well, it's simple. We have to make the giant leap as a profession towards value creation. Now, strides were made in the 90s where risk, value management, and benefits realization and management took root in Europe. And even a couple of years ago, PMI even started talking about it, so kudos to them. But that's not enough. We have to bounce beyond and look at project impacts. My talk, though, was to outline the challenge and sustainability. Tomorrow, for those of you who signed up for the masterclass, I'm going to show you how. So a little teaser here. So I'm going to end with this, and I hope I've covered a little bit about sustainability, give you a little bit more of a wider scope of what it all encompasses. And I will thank you now for your attention and hand it over to Dave. Thank you so much.